Welcome to Untold, a podcast about Utah's boldest entrepreneurs and business leaders, their behind the scenes battles, breakthroughs, and what the heck were we thinking moments. These are the stories you'll wish you'd heard sooner about the businesses you might not have known were right next door. With me today is CEO of one of those Utah businesses, Ben Cahoon, CEO of Techcyte. Welcome. Thanks for being here, Ben.
Thanks, Sean. Glad to be here. Excited to have a discussion today.
Yeah, me too. Looking at what you've done in TechCite, one thing kind of surfaces immediately as an eye catcher. You have referred to yourself as a fecal innovator. Not something you hear every day. Tell me a little bit about that story. About why do you say that, and what does it mean today for TechCite?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, we started on this digital pathology journey, boy, back in a successful Utah entrepreneur named Ralph Yarrow did a tech transfer out of the University of Utah, and he hired a guy named Rick Smith, who was the first technically employee of TechSite. And they started that in 2013, basically got to a prototype in 2014 and 2015. And I came in 2016, did some business, analysis planning, and then eventually invested in the business in early 2016. And um, at that point, we changed the corporate strategy to go from Lyme disease, which they were going after initially, to go after some less regulated areas, eventually to get to the human regulated areas, because we knew the human regulated areas would be great. So what that meant is we went after environmental tests, which are not regulated, and then in the veterinary market. So we happened to be at a human digital pathology show, and there was a veterinary, one of the largest veterinary clinics, not clinic, but a reference lab in the world. One of their people was teaching the human, pathologist how to go digital. And she said, we have this other problem called the fecal tsunami. And yeah, quite the terminology. So that piqued our interest. Basically, they get, millions of samples of cat and dog feces into their lab. And for every 100 samples, they need a person. So they have a big problem expanding because you've got to have a very technical person that can find parasites in fecal material, train them up and have them deliver reports. So she goes, yeah, we're great on digital pathology and tissue and all those things, but we don't have a solution for this. So I immediately went home and started just cold calling labs around the country. And there ended up being one in Utah called Animal Reference Pathology. And I called, I got in touch with the owner. His name is David Gardner, and he was just he was all over it. He's a super innovator in the veterinary community, and he said, "Come on up." So I came up to his place, and we started down the journey of literally trying to find parasites in dog and cat feces. And we tried everything imaginable, from an AI perspective, even getting a scan. Most so our company, we digitize glass slides, and then we use AI. We upload that to the cloud, and then we use AI to figure out what's on them. So there was a bunch of challenges there. One, how do you digitize a glass slide? Most of the scanners were meant for tissue, and fecal is a wet medium. So how do you actually do that and get a good image? And we tried everything from dots on cover slips to wheatgrass mixed in to nano beads. Like we tried, and that's where the thing came from, where like I'm a fecal innovator. We tried everything under the sun. Eventually, we got a patent that we've been prosecuting worldwide, where we put fiducials, or basically marks, on cover slips, and then we teach the scanner to look for those marks, and then the eggs float, and we tell the scanner to go right below there and scan those eggs. So we eventually got the AI working really, really well. The images working really, really well, and we ended up partnering with the largest animal health vendor in the world, Zoetis. Zoetis was Pfizer Animal Health. They went public under the Zoetis brand, and we are basically their digital pathology platform. We've released everything from fecal, blood, dermatology, masses, So if your and urine, so if your dog or cat goes to the vet, they will most likely, you know, take whatever sample they need, digitize it. It comes to our cloud where we analyze it and we get those results back to the vet. So
Wow.
that was sort of a long story, but yeah, that's why it all started with fecal.
So how does that story influence like product development, at the company today?
So being an entrepreneur is a very, very, very fine balance of never wanting to give up, but knowing when to give up, right? To say something's not possible. And I've probably been more on the try to keep going down the path to make things work. And in most cases, we eventually make things work, right? From mold to tissue to blood, right? We've been able to do lots and lots of AI algorithms and workflow. There have been things that just haven't worked out. And so I think how we develop products today is heavily influenced by that entrepreneurial spirit and just trying everything you can to make it work, but not going to the extreme that that you're going down a path that just won't get you where you need to be.
Is that term is that term kind of historical, fecal innovator? Now do you hear it very often, or is it kind of just
No, no, it
gotcha?
comes up every once in a while. So like I'll give you an example. I at a Christmas party I got a white elephant gift that was a fecal emoji suit. So it's a brown suit, had a fecal emoji sign on the head. And before we got our deal with Zoetis, I wore that to a trade show. And I just again it goes to that entrepreneurial spirit. You have to be willing to do anything um, to anything that's ethical and good, right? You don't want to be breaking any laws or do anything that's not ethical, but do anything you can to get that first deal, to get that first customer, right? To get you down the path.
That's great. So I mean, you've had a broad number of experiences in business. So as I looked back at your bio, you've been in like turbochargers, oil and gas, edtech, medtech, property development. You mentioned entrepreneurial spirit. Is that the common thread between all these, or is there something else that ties all these different experiences together?
Yeah, it probably goes really way far back, just probably my genes. My ancestors came over as pioneers and started the first brick company in the Utah area. And I'm actually the first Cahoon in our family to not be in brick. So my dad was the president, my grandpa, etc. Back multiple generations. Um, so my dad said, "Don't go into brick." So I got that message, and I got a super amazing opportunity. I got a computer science degree, and then got a great job at Intel. And I was actually with Intel for about 8 years. And I felt like Intel gave me a great basis of how to run, an innovative company. I ended up in product management. I didn't develop software. I ended up in product management, defining and building. And product management is such an interesting, place for an entrepreneur because you're interacting with everything, right? All parts of the business you've got to understand, from the business side, the finance side, to customers, to sales, customer support, everything. So I got a really good basis there, and got lucky that Intel did pay to for me to go back and get my MBA. In 2001, after the tech bubble burst, Intel divested of its Landesk business. And Landesk, that actually ended up being a great thing for Landesk because Landesk went on to become Ivanti, which is one of the highest revenue companies, software companies in the state. And I ended up not staying with them. I left in, I think, '03 after we had spun out. And at that point, since then, literally, everyone thought I was crazy, but I left tech to go do the turbocharger company with a local founder. And then since then, the common thread has mostly been software with a little bit of real estate. Partner and I developed about 45 townhomes in Moab. But my love is software. It's just magical to me that you can basically create something out of nothing, sit at a computer, make it happen. And then I love putting all of the strategic pieces in place to get an aligned corporate strategy to fit around that software. Because the danger in software is you can create something that people don't want. And
Yeah.
so I love being able to put all the pieces together and create a company that has an enduring competitive advantage.
Yeah, you can see that too, right? A lot of companies develop that hammer and they're looking for a nail, right? And that product development background of yours kind of helps. Sounds like you learned how to bring it all together and
Yeah,
make
we at
something work.
Landesk, we really did create a desktop management and server management platform, which they eventually did over, I think, over 15 acquisitions where they bolted on service management and patch management security. So we did create a platform, and we've taken that same approach at Techcyte. We've created a platform that can then be applied to all these different markets. So we've got an environmental mold test. We're just entering the food safety market. We do both anatomic and clinical pathology, and then the veterinary market. And the reason we can do that is we've created a platform that becomes the basis for AI and workflow to be bolted on. So um, I love a platform strategy. That's I think the goal of everyone to get there. But if you get a platform, it really does create not just a one trick pony, right? You just don't have one solution. You can actually create many, many solutions and build many different areas.
Okay, awesome. I saw some posts about mountain biking, and the connection to Moab, right? Kind of one of the mountain
hmm
biking meccas of the world. I'm curious, what role does biking play for you in your life?
It's actually broader than biking. I'm sort of an adrenaline junkie, so I've windsurfed since 1986. I'm a backcountry snowboarder, so I go in the wintertime. I'm literally up every Saturday backcountry snowboarding. Um, I'm now moved on from windsurfing to wing foiling. So,
Yeah,
like last week, I was working half days up in the Columbia River Gorge, work in the morning, sail in the afternoon. Um,
Hood River.
Hood up at Hood River,
Yeah,
then mountain
yeah,
biking and Moab canyoneering. So all those things for me, I'm an all-in sort of guy. And so I'm always thinking about the business and are we aligned? Is there any tweaks that we need to do? And so those sort of adrenaline adventure sports are a time where you really need to focus to stay alive, right? And so I like that I can do something that requires all of my focus, and I can. Those are really the only times I can put work aside. Other
yeah.
than that, I'm always thinking, right? So that's why I like those type of sports.
Man, I could totally relate. I do a lot of the same things, backcountry and skiing and mountain biking, and if there's not a little bit of danger involved, like it doesn't get my attention completely. So I can relate. Yeah,
Well,
I'm
if I ever give up our secret stash in the back country, you'll have to swear to never tell anyone because it's we've been going there. Actually, found it on an Intel snowboarding or snowmobiling trip. A buddy that was working at Intel, we found this just amazing powder stash that we've been going to for over 23, 24 years. So it's
oh, wow.
pretty dang special, but we want to keep it secret.
It's like the fish. It's like a good fishing hole, right? You got to
Yep,
swear people to secrecy. I get it.
absolutely.
I get it. Place I go, right? There's only the locals know the names of any of the trails. Like it's a code. There's a code, and there's no maps or anything like that. Nobody know. Yeah, so I get it. I'm
Awesome.
curious. So when you think about some of these, let's use mountain biking, and you've been in a number of different startups. Is there a biking trail that you'd compare to a startup journey?
Yeah, there's one in Moab in the Cane Creek drainage called Captain Ahab,
Yep.
and it is brutal, right? And it is up and down and rocky, and I would say that's pretty much what a startup is. It takes so much effort. I, at my at at my MBA, I got the really cool opportunity to take a class from Larry H. Miller when he was still alive.
Yeah.
And so he told us about entrepreneurship, how difficult it was, and how many sacrifices it had taken from him in his life, and some sad stories, and then some obviously some amazing stories with another group. So I sort of knew going into it that the entrepreneurial path wasn't the easy path, but it's super rewarding. And I'd say, yeah, very much like that mountain bike path. It's very difficult, but just gorgeous, and you got to enjoy the ride.
I love that trail. That's a great analogy. When we first met, I asked a little bit about your company, and you pointed out that you guys are very remote. Like you have people scattered kind of around the world. I'm curious. A lot of people during COVID had to face that challenge all of a sudden, right? And
Mhm.
then figure out like what do they do next. I'm wondering, as you've kind of learned from this experience, what do you do to keep teams connected and highly functioning when they're geographically diverse or dispersed?
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of experience with this. So the first company, the educational software company
Yeah.
that we grew and eventually sold to Lenovo, and now it's basically the Lenovo software group. We literally grew it all on Skype. We never had an office. There were some people in the company that in 10 years I had only met in person twice.
Wow.
Um, so you know, we sort of figured things out how to do it back then. I wasn't smart enough. People would always say, "You guys ought to write a book." I never wrote the book. I never wrote any of our secrets or anything down. But while we were at Techcyte, we found a company called GitLab. It's a source code repository company, and they have a thing called the GitLab Remote Manifesto. The GitLab Remote Manifesto basically says, look, commuting is horrific on families and people, right? You don't want to spend 1 to 3 hours a day commuting. And there's just a ton of advantages to a company if you can make remote work possible. So we fully adopted the GitLab Remote Manifesto, and I have to give them a ton of credit. They wrote down all those lessons that I had learned early on, and they took it to the next level. So if you're interested as a company in going remote, they basically have open sourced their company, and you can
Oh,
use their platform and all of their documents. Pretty much the only thing you can't get to is their salaries. Everything else is there. So when we found that, it was literally like we found a gold mine, and we changed our values, we changed our communication methods, we changed how we hire. We basically took all the pieces of a strategy and adapted it to that GitLab method. And one of the key, so there's sort of two things in that remote manifesto. One is remote first. So we don't like hybrid. We're all remote because hybrid is just the worst of all worlds, right? You get a group of people who are
yeah.
together, and then everyone else
Other
feels a
people are
little,
left out, and
yeah, you're left out. So we we're fully remote, we're dedicated to that. And then we have a thing called the handbook. And so it's remote first, handbook first. A handbook, it's an online handbook using the GitLab infrastructure, merge requests and approvals, and it's not really what I would consider like a handbook. Like when you go to a company and get a handbook, you're thinking, oh, where's my PTO policy and sexual harassment policy, all those sort of things. It is that, but it is way, 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 way more than that. We really look at it as our company brain, meaning if you have a silo of information that needs to be communicated to anyone, get it out of your brain and get it in the handbook. And so the first day that people come to TechCite, whether they're in accounting, sales, a technical, position or non-technical, they're expected to make a change to the handbook. And so you've got to learn a little markup language. You got to, look for changes that could, whether it's a spelling mistake or whatever it needs to be. We want people contributing to the handbook so it becomes a living, breathing repository of who we are. If you came to TechSite, you could probably spend at least a month just self-serving between all the videos, documents, organizational policies, procedures, everything. We can help you get up to speed very, very quickly, and it's all there. So if someone has a question like on chat, we refer them to, hey, here's the handbook that answers that question. And so we've created a whole culture around that. If you watched our chat channel for how many handbook entries are happening, there's multiple handbook entries happening every day because you're just creating
Oh, wow.
information every single day in a company that needs to get disseminated.
Interesting. So you're kind of open sourcing the DNA of the company to the employees. Or is
Absolutely.
there
One
some
of
kind
our
of governance? Like how do you navigate like making sure it's right?
Yeah, so to submit a merge request, right? So let's say you find a change that needs to happen. You submit a merge request, and there's an owner of that page.
Oh,
So
got
that the owner of that page would then review the request.
it. Okay.
And so, like, if I saw something that was wrong or needed to be changed in the accounting, I would submit a merge request. That our person over accounting would then review that and then submit it.
Okay.
So there,
Okay.
it's a little chaotic, but it also there's method to the
Yeah.
madness.
So you mentioned that required like a change in values. What had to break in order for you to build that and be successful with it?
We had some values initially with the company that were pretty, entrepreneurial and being frugal, and that was sort of where who I am, and that's sort of how the values sort of came out from that. And when we went to this online remote work, we really had to think of what are the key things that are the key values that we all need to share that either people need to have or they need to agree with when they come on. And so one of those is collaboration, right? I am collaborating with people every single minute of every single day. So how do we collaborate? What are communication methods in doing that? Another core value is transparency, right? The whole concept is that you can self-serve and there's really no secrets except for salary information, right, in the company. So pretty much everything we try to err on the side of it being transparent. We're results oriented, inclusion and diversity. Those are all just core things that we adopted as part of the values.
Wow. Was there anything that you thought you would need to do to be successful that actually was a misconception, or it didn't work when you went remote?
The only thing that we've really added over time, when you're a SaaS company, and we've got some of the largest organizations in the world that are depending on us, and even small organizations, right? We've sold to over 9,000 veterinary clinics. Those small businesses to very, very large businesses are delivering results to patients every single hour, every single minute of every single day. So the one thing that we im- had to really think about and added to the culture was around SaaS delivery. It's got to be available 24 by 7. And so that really forced us to create the policies and procedures and all the way down to who's going to be available, right? You have to get very, very tactical. So you start strategic and then get very, very tactical of how do we deliver um, highly, highly reliable service to important people delivering important messages to patients every single day. So we've added that sort of SaaS, always on, always
Yeah,
available.
on-call system, almost like yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, to tell you the truth, one of the most important things and sort of counterintuitive, we never deploy the software on a Friday. We actually do what Google does and Facebook and all the big companies. They are making tons and tons and tons of little changes every single day. And the only way that works is that you've got a good system for rolling back if you make a mistake, and you have a really good system of testing. So we write tons and tons of automated test cases, and our team, we had to scale that ability up, and the team just stepped up to the plate. And so we create great test cases, and then if we do make a mistake, we have a kappa system where we do a root cause analysis, and we never want to make that mistake again. And so over time, as you develop that muscle, you just get better and better and better at it, so you can deliver, multiple nines of reliability to our customers.
And as you're building those muscles, like give us an idea of where are you going with Techcyte? Like if everything goes to plan, like where do you think you might be in 5 years?
So our goal with TechCite is literally to be the preferred digital pathology platform or digital diagnostic platform in every market that we're going into. So we already are that in the veterinary market. We've helped our partners, Zoetis, literally be 5 years ahead, and no one has been able to create such a comprehensive and amazing solution as we've done with Zoetis. So we're there on vet. We're actually in the mold industry, we are by far there's really no one else that can even compete with us in the mold industry. So we do an air test, and we can count and classify about 160 different types of mold, pollen, and particulate. And there's just no one else that's even come close. In fact, some
So
companies
this
have
is
just gone
like
out of business.
testing a home for toxic
Oh,
mold
we're
and
a
that kind of
business.
stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're number one there. Where we in the clinical pathology space, where we sort of really cut our teeth, and that's clinical pathology is things like blood smears, fecal smears, gram stains for bacteriology, um, cervical cytology. We we because of our expertise in AI and workflow, we really um, and our platform approach really became sort of the leader there. And then that led to a relationship with Mayo Clinic. And Mayo Clinic came to us and said, "Look, you guys are great in clinical pathology. We want to work with you there." But then they asked us to build out their anatomic pathology platform. And the anatomic pathology space, which is what most people think about when they hear digital pathology, it's a much more crowded space. But with Mayo Clinic, who has been going digital for about 7 years, we really got the cheat codes on how to make a world-class system. So for the last year and a half, we've been investing, and we're the first company in the world now to have both anatomic pathology and clinical pathology in one platform. And so we want to be the preferred platform, really raise the bar on what's required to have a complete platform for digital pathology. And so that means everything from histology to cervical cytology to microbiology. Um, in a lab, we want to be able to do everything from fluorescence to bright field microscopy, really the whole gamut. And that's a big mission. So we've got a lot of people working hard in data management, AI, workflow, security. Right? When you're delivering, results to patients, it's got to be a highly available, highly secure,
HIPAA and
um,
all that stuff. Yeah.
HIPAA, GDPR, FDA, CEIVDR, ISO. Yeah, we've got a good regulatory group that's sort of helping us navigate all those requirements.
What would you think? So to achieve that vision, what do you think are the biggest challenges that have to be overcome for you and the team?
You know, you've got to have a good strategy, right? So I think our strategy of having a complete and unified platform using open standards is definitely an important part. So if you don't have a good strategy that's aligned, you're never going to get there. But it really comes down to execution, right? You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you can't execute it, and execution generally comes down to your team.
Yeah.
So again, it all comes back to have a super high performing team. I really feel like the team that we've associated, that we've been able to put together at TechCite, is I've worked with some great teams at Intel and at the startup we did in Luxembourg and in other areas. But this team we've put together at TechCite is something special. Some of the smartest people I've ever worked with in my whole career. And the great thing about TechCite is it is very mission driven. So there's nothing against building a widget to be able to sell something quick, right? That's great. But at TechSet, we have a little bit bigger vision. We want to make sure that we're ethically using AI to help the people who are delivering the test have a better life, as well as getting more accurate and efficient results for the people receiving the test. And that broader mission, I think, really attracts talented people to TechSite.
Wow, that's great. You've brought up AI a number of different times, like the kind of the core of the company is
Hmm.
an AI engine, it sounds like. So AI is a very hot topic right now. Everybody's talking about it. What advice would you have for somebody who currently they want to leverage AI in their company, but
Hmm.
they've got fears. They don't know how to do it. Where would you tell them to start?
Boy, when we first started going down the AI path, and basically, so people understand what we do, we digitize a slide, and so you get a gigapixel, like it could be 1 to 2 gigabytes of information. We've got to get that up to GPUs in the cloud, spin up those GPUs, and then analyze it. And when we originally started down the AI path, there wasn't anywhere to go. We really had to beat our head against the wall many, many times to be able to differentiate these very, very small objects. Uh, we thought that the answer was just pure data, right? Get the more data that you have, the better. It ended up not being the case because if you get a massive data set, it's really hard to maintain that data set, and you got to create a lot of tooling around it. So we've created at Techcyte, I think, a smarter way of doing it where we're just adding the right amount of data to the data set, meaning the data that will make the most impact to the model. So if you're just adding data that really doesn't impact the model, there's no reason to have it there. It just
It's just dead
is
weight.
extra cost. Yep. So we've got an iterative approach to model development where we're adding data that makes an impact. Now we still have to think about all the strata, right? You've got to cover all the different bases that you may see in the wild so that you don't overfit and you don't get surprised out there. Um, but AI turns out to be a lot of really good tooling and really good just data analysis. And then you've got to have people working on, the architectures, but there's a lot less of that than actually just data pipeline. And so a lot of our secret sauce at TechSite is this data pipeline, how we get data into the model, how we change it, how we prove that it actually make an impact, then how do you actually choose the model
Mm.
that best works across all the different classes. So that's it's a lot more grunt work than you would think, right? It's not all just sexy, add a bunch of data and out comes the right answer. It's a lot of work.
It doesn't look like one of those TV shows, NCIS or something like that. They're
No,
just
no,
yeah.
yeah. It's a lot of work. It's fun work, but it's a lot of work.
So when you think about it from a leadership standpoint, what qualities does a leader need to have to be able to navigate the fast evolution of technology?
I think I got some really, really wise training through my MBA and reading just a bunch of books, right? I'm an avid reader of things like Crossing the Chasm, Inside the Tornado, The Innovator's Dilemma, just books that really, I think, give you a great foundation. And I think leadership at the end of the day is all about culture. One of my favorite case studies is Southwest. We did a case study on Southwest in business school. And if you look at Southwest, they had a great strategy, meaning they aligned, their core principle of low cost, right? And once you start aligning low cost, you have the same plane. So your pilots and the parts, and then you don't participate in the big system that costs more money. Everything is geared. You've got fast turnaround times. Everything in their strategy to who they hired was aligned around being a low cost provider. And Herb Kelleher, the former CEO of Southwest, he saw it as his only job to make sure that that culture supported that strategy. And so at the very top, it really is about culture and making sure that that culture aligns with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, yeah, and it strikes me too. You mentioned the execution, right? A great strategy doesn't mean anything if you don't have the execution, right? And that culture supporting the people that need to go and execute, right? is kind of what jumps out with Southwest and the example you gave.
Absolutely. It's interesting, I think it'll be interesting to see. I can remember the strategy professor saying, no one is going to be able to unseat Southwest except for Southwest.
And they
And if
have, haven't they?
they really could. It's going to be really interesting to see how they navigate this next chapter because they're sort of doing it to themselves, right? They're changing to become more like other people, and they may lose that secret sauce that they've been so good at. So I'm super interested to see the outcome of how that all happens.
Yeah, I mean, certainly seems, at least to me, like, yeah, they're just another vanilla carrier. Yeah, a lot of this stuff has changed, whether it's small and big. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. So you mentioned that you it's hard for you to turn it off. In entrepreneurial journey, like everybody I've interviewed with this podcast, like it's a grind. It's a lot of work. To try to get your vision into reality. What do you do? Like, what have you learned to help you to cope? You mentioned some of your adrenaline activities, but how do you get by day to day? What are things you found that work to keep you in the right space to be the best you can be?
Yeah, I've been doing this literally. I've been involved in entrepreneurial ventures since 2003 when I left Intel. So I've been grinding for a long time. And what are the things I've tried to keep as much family balance. And so one of our family mottos is we work hard, but we play hard. And so I've tried to be a really good dad and a good husband. Um, you really have to try to excel and be really good at time management and take the time, right? Because it seems like if you've scheduled a vacation, that's when the important negotiation is going to be, right? There's always something that's going to become, and you've got to take the time. I like how Intel handled their PTO. The first day, the first day you started at Intel, you got 3 weeks vacation, right? The first day, and you could take advantage and just leave, and but like, what's the point of that? Like, so Intel is a use it or lose it. And so you've got 3 weeks, they want you to use it. And I think we've sort of incorporated some of those same things where um, we want people to get away, right? To decompress, to, you know, not be so much in the whirlwind that that you can't, sort of sharpen the saw to go to a, Stephen Covey thing. And one of the things that we do at Techcyte, we have, I think the name of the system is 4DX. And basically, the basic premise is that you've got whirlwind, just email and chat and text messages and everything that you need to do during the day. But there are things that are more important. And if you can take the time to focus on one of those a week that will get you towards the goal, you actually get to that execution. So everyone at TechSite, we do what's called a WIG commitment, and that's a WIG is a wildly important goal. So I when I sit down during the week at the first of the week, I'm like, what can I do this week that's outside of email and meetings and the whirlwind of life in a business? What can I do that can move the needle and actually, and if you purposely think of that, it's amazing what you can then accomplish. Because you've got to get the whirlwind done, but if you can get those big important things in, that's I think I've been a little bit more successful than others at being able to do that, right? Find the things that actually matter to move the needle.
And it sounds like you have a period of reflection in the week to be able to kind of step out of the whirlwind and be able to do that. Is that
Yeah,
that?
we have Mondays. Like I just Monday, I think people follow a natural cycle, right? Um, there's the natural cycle of the holidays and then and the week. And so we try to get off to start on a good start of the week by making your WIG commitment. on a Monday, and then you've got the whole week to get it done, and then you report back on that Monday. So I try to do that reflection in most of the meetings that are critical on Mondays.
And so this is something that's kind of cascaded into the company.
Mhm.
How often do you hit that goal versus not hit that goal?
So the thing about a wig commitment is that you're making a commitment to the team. So if you like, there are probably just a handful of times that I didn't make my wig commitment and I had to do it 2 weeks in a row. So the idea behind a wig commitment is you're going to choose something that you think you could that's out of the ordinary that you could get done that week. So if it turns into a every week thing, you've missed the whole concept.
I see. Yeah. So something that's going to move you forward, not a new routine or
Yep.
something. Okay.
Yeah, it's like so we're working on a new thing right now where we're taking our exact same platform and we're applying it to food safety. It actually is going to end up being probably the biggest TAM that we're going after, but yet it fits the platform really well, so it actually doesn't take a ton of investment. Um, so my wigs over the past few months have been strategically around that because I've got so much going on, but how can I move that food safety project forward? And whether it's finding a partner and outreaching to potential partners or making sure that the validation test or we've got a problem with the technology piece, like how can I really move a project forward every week? And so a lot of my wig commitments have been around that project this year.
Okay. And do you try to structure that at all, like, and tie that into company objectives specifically, or is this free? People have freedom to choose how they
They're
what
totally
they
free to
commit.
choose, but we do have a corporate strategy that we review every year, and then we do a mid-year review. So
Okay.
we have a corporate strategy and a product strategy that's just open to anyone in the company. And so your goals, so we do have wigs as a company. So we've got about 5 wigs as a company for the year.
Yeah.
And so your wig commitment is needs to align to one of those 5 goals, whether,
Uh,
and a lot of them are around product releases or revenue or a regulatory, release, something along those lines. So we've got 5 really important things that would drive the company forward. And then your weekly commitment needs to be aligned to those, but you've got tons of freedom to choose that.
okay. Okay. Cool. So, you've like you said been working as an entrepreneur in a variety of ways since 2003.
Mhm.
This podcast is targeted toward inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs and business leaders. If one of them's listening to this right now and wondering what to do next, what advice would you have for somebody who's just getting started?
You know, I stayed at Intel for 8 years because I was scared about being an entrepreneur, right? I knew I wanted to be one, but I just, you felt like you had to always have the best idea. You had to have something that was revolutionary and 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 Intel seemed like such a safe place, right? And what I learned is that big companies are not necessarily safe spaces. Someone, many, many rungs above you can make a decision and they can sell off your division, and all the stock options and everything you've been working towards for years can just disappear, right? And so when I realized that and that I could be more in control of my own destiny and that being an entrepreneur was actually safer than necessarily being in a, staying in a big career company and um, there's more reward. So it's safer and there's more reward there, right? That's sort of, you don't really usually think about entrepreneurship that way, but I realized that's the way it actually is. Um, and so it's not easier. It's definitely harder, but for me, it was ironically safer and had a bigger reward. So it was a no-brainer. That's why I've continued doing it.
Excellent.
Yeah, we sold our company to Lenovo, and then I found myself again at a big company flying between Beijing and North Carolina. There was no more upside, and I'm like, this isn't for me. So I immediately, we took our family to Luxembourg and built a fintech startup in Luxembourg. That was sort of fun.
Wow. So push through the hesitancy and the fear.
Absolutely.
It's safer and better rewards. That's
Yep.
great. Awesome. Well, this has been a real pleasure speaking with you, Ben. You've talked about Techcyte a number of times. I'm sure there's lots that people could learn more about your company. Where's the best place to learn more or learn about opportunities at Techcyte?
Yeah, just go to techcyte.com. That's TECHCYTE for cell, right? Site cell. So techcyte.com. And then we have multiple sites off of that. So our mold site is Sporesight. And you'll find our other partners like the brand name for our vet product is VetScan Imagist, but that's owned by Zoetis. So you'll be able to see, opportunities we have for in all the roles, right? We have everything from engineers to QA to data managers, accounting, sales, all the roles we've got, and so you can see where we're going. Um, you know, most of your listeners are probably not potential customers, right? Because we're very focused on either vet clinics or home inspectors or hospital systems and labs.
Yeah.
So it's probably not generally applicable to your viewers or your listeners, but it is super interesting and again, sort of a hidden gem within Utah that you just probably wouldn't even know existed if you're not in that area.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why I called the podcast Untold, right? So many people listen to these and then I get notes back like I'd seen that company. I didn't know what they did, you know. So here we go. We've shown a light on Techcyte, and thank you so much for spending time with me today, Ben.
Well, thank you. It was a great opportunity. I appreciate the time. It was fun.
All right, awesome. Thanks.